Hey, good evening. First and foremost, I want to make sure this is working because we spent 20 minutes walking down London only to be told that this did not go live. I can't see anyone on here.
We're live.
Alright, so apparently we're live. I think it's working. There we go. People have joined. It's saying it's live. It happened last time, but we're gonna carry on with this just in case. Alright, I think we have a couple of viewers. This is going. Alright, it's moving onwards. Fantastic. Okay, so welcome to London. My name is Nizam, and here we have
David.
We are full-time Londoners, born and raised, right?
Born and raised.
Born and raised. I work, I call myself an educationist. I work around social mobility, helping young people fulfill their potential. Oh, hold on a second. Oh no, sorry. Pressing buttons. Yusuf, is it working? I need you to tell me it's working. If it's working, then I will carry on talking. All right, we are live. Yes. All right, so we welcome to London in this fine, beautiful evening, as beautiful as it gets in London. Nizam again, David. We are here to talk about SDG 16, which is and an ambulance has decided to. It's live. It's happening. So goal SGD Sustainable Development Goal 16 is dedicated to the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, the provision of access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable institutions at all levels. Now, why do I mention that? So that we know what we're talking about. We kept forgetting. But most importantly, hey, the world is watching. We're very excited. We did spend half an hour talking about this exact same topic, and it fell apart. So you see London buses going by. You are very, very welcome. So me and David, this is central London, we met on these roads pretty much over 10 years ago whilst we were studying. And what we thought we would do is take what is essentially a very macro issue in terms of a sustainable development goal and make it more personal. And what we're going to do is make it personal, share our stories, and talk about 5 things that every country should know or at least think about. So that's what we're going to do. So shall we walk? But before we carry on, we're going to give you a tour of London as we're doing it. So here we go. So behind me, you will be able to see right there, that's St. Paul's Cathedral, the most beautiful building in London. That's Canary Wharf and the city. Over there you have the London Eye, and then just around there you have the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben, which is wonderful. So SDG 16, the first thing the world should know is we live in a very, very busy place in London. You know, it's nearly 9 p.m. The bridge is busy, people are walking, there's traffic on the roads. I can show you right there. There are cars constantly streaming through. So we talk about building a peaceful society. And the challenge I have is, how do you build a peaceful society when you can't even have peace at an individual level? And it's a challenge I often think about. And so this goes on to really important measures which I know are being taken more seriously now, and the work I do day to day, mental health and well-being, is a core part of what we do, because fundamentally when you think about your physical body and your shape, you are going to go to the gym, you're going to eat well, but what do we do to actually make sure our mental state is doing well every single day? How do we make sure we are conscious? You know, if you're gonna build a peaceful and just society, we need to make sure those values are represented at the basic individual level. And so that's the first thing I want to talk about, which is how do you ensure that every single day we take some time out to reflect. We're not constantly in this cycle of doing the what's and the how's, but we're also asking the question, why are we doing what we're doing? You know, why are we going to work every single day? Why are we waking up and doing the rigmarole of life? We really need to answer these questions to make sure we have a really sustainable way of doing things, and then beyond that to make sure we have peace within our really individual selves, because I think that will truly help ensure we can then build up from the individual because fundamentally humanity is obviously a communal being of us individual humans, and then building peaceful societies from there, and then from there building a peaceful world. It sounds very airy-fairy, I know, but I really truly do believe if you can't have peace within yourself, and I challenge every single one of you watching, which is not that many right now, but I hope increases, to really think about what do you do to reflect and to think about your peace and your consciousness. So that's number one. You can't have a peaceful society if you can't have a peaceful self. Number two, David.
Number two.
Oh, there we go.
All right. So, hi, I'm David. And I want to talk, following on from what Nizam was talking about, I want to talk about not just looking within yourself and talking to yourself, but also talking to those outside of your normal comfort zone, stepping outside of your normal boundaries. So, and actually, as we've reached the top of Waterloo Bridge, you'll see in front of us in a second that we'll be passing the theatre district, and I'll tie that in some way to what I'm about to say, and that is peace is harmony. And harmony, in my opinion, comes through balance and comes through symbiosis and achieving some sort of state whereby all the parts that are required to make something function work with each other. And in order for that to happen, these elements need to communicate with each other. So I would challenge us not to think of SDG 16 simply as an SDG within its own right. We need to think of it as part of the entire set of goals that we are attempting to achieve. How is it possible that we can achieve peace if on a day-to-day basis people are still fighting for access to clean water, or people are still fighting for access to food, access to books, access to the basic tools that require them to survive? Peace is a prerequisite for all these other goals being achieved, but at the same time, peace in itself won't be achieved if these other goals aren't being worked towards. So there needs to be that kind of harmony whereby those goals talk to each other in order to reach.
We're trying to cross the road.
It is dangerous out here, but are trying to reach. So as we venture across the streets of London, we are facing the Lyceum Theatre, where the Lion King is playing, and that story centered on the
jungle, the mighty jungle, the lions lead.
That too, but also the concept of the circle of life, and that's where all these different parts,
very nice,
all these different parts kind of work together to create the whole. No part exists in isolation. There is no one part of a circle that you can take away and still have a circle remaining. So these goals need to talk to each other. But more than that, so do we.
Ooh, nice.
We need to talk to each other. Last week was the International Day of Peace, Peace Day. And in the work that I do, I was really touched actually by a story that I heard from people that we work with from both Pakistan and India, who decided earlier on to host a cricket match between each other.
What's the best run country on earth?
Ooh, teleporting to us.
Best run country on earth. I mean, it's a difficult one, but I think we're in it. I really, the fact that you have just look around you. Just look at the infrastructure. There's over 8 million people that live in this city. They are commuting every single day. They are moving. There's a bus network that's probably the best bus network, I think. Probably, I can't say in the world. The night bus system is really good. But David, go talk to your second point.
Wait. Wait. It is very mean on these streets sometimes. So we'll come on to actually how countries are run, because London is a really well-run city. But even in places like this, there are still room for improvement. There's still roles that we can play to achieve the SDGs. I'll just finish off my second point by saying that we do need to talk with each other. We need to step out of our echo chambers. We need to actually get off Facebook sometimes and talk to people who challenge us, people who don't like the same things that we like, people that don't listen to the same things that we listen to, that don't have the same views, the same religion, the same backgrounds, the same tastes that we do, because that's how we will learn to overcome differences, through learning to understand each other. A lot of what we sometimes have in terms of preconceptions of other people either come from third-hand experiences or second-hand experiences. They're handed down from our parents. They're handed to us through the media. Sometimes we need to step aside to the other side and learn to understand things from a different point of view.
All right.
And that's what we learned from the Indian versus Pakistan cricket match. They decided of their own accord to get together with each other and to play cricket as a means, as a channel to bring themselves together, to be able to talk and foster a new understanding between themselves. So
all right, so I'm seeing his answer. I'm going to take this open really quickly.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, guys. There we go.
Yep.
What's the best run country on earth still? Is a really good question. I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to answer that by talking about my third point.
Amen.
And the third point is about how do you build a strong institution. Part of the strength of the city that we are walking in, and you will see the diversity of people walking around us. It truly is a melting pot of every minority you can think of. And so one of the best things a strong institution can do is be reflective and be representative of its society, of its structures, of everything that it represents or tries to represent. And we're going to be walking past, we're on the Kingsway right now. It's a brilliant historical seat of power. There is a church across the road where when Margaret Thatcher passed away, she was there. She was hosted there for people to visit. We're going past the London School of Economics, which is in front of us, which is a very significant building right now. And I'll tell you why, because, or not even just a building, an institution. This month alone, they have just hired and appointed, and she started, Dr. Nemat Shafiq, who is the first female director in the London School of Economics history. Now, I refuse to believe that there has not been a phenomenal woman who has not been capable of doing that job. And so what does that say about the LSE? I mean, it says that we are, there's light right now, fantastic. Don't know if that's a good thing for the audience. And so the need to make sure the institutions that shape our country, our policies, that shape the thinking and cultivate the environment that we live in, represent and reflect us. And by us, I don't mean just color, I don't mean religion, I mean diversity of thinking, I mean diversity of everything. And that is utterly, utterly important. And the best countries in the world that are run effectively often are countries that pull together different thoughts, thinking for the greater good of that country. I mean, this is where, recently I look at Singapore and I look at the fact that they recruited or elected a female prime minister. London has a mayor of London who happens to be Muslim, and he was elected during a period where, unfortunately, we run an atrocious campaign in this city, and that was very, very powerful. And so one of the things that we can absolutely do is to make sure our institutions are diverse, are reflective of our societies. And the way you do that is super simple. You make sure you can, on a basic level, you can do unconscious bias training day to day, on an individual level. And this whole spiel and Facebook Live is about the individual. What can you and I do every single day in our institution? We can go in and celebrate our diversity, our multiple identities with our teammates, our colleagues, our senior management. That's what I do. I go in there, I am proud of who I am. I carry many, many identities, and that's what we can absolutely do. Yeah, absolutely. Look, London is a beautiful place. Look, we've got, so right there, over there, was where the BBC World Service was housed for more than, I think, 40, 50 years. And so the voice of London and the UK came out of this very, very spot. It's a very special place. So that was point number 3. Going to hand over to David for point number 4 right now. And we are, it's stunning. London's beautiful. Really, really happy that you guys are joining us for this special talk and this special tour. Also significant because, this is the area where me and David met however many years ago, and I don't know if that would have been possible without the city.
No.
Over to you, David.
You'll hear some church bells chime in, and that is to announce our arrival. We are at our next destination, and Nizam was talking about institutions and building strong institutions, and I want to follow on from his point and talk about how institutions can serve peace, but also sometimes how they can undermine peace or create a culture of civil unrest. So I feel like we need to understand that institutions should also uphold and respect the rule of law. A lot of the time, and I say this, sorry, in the context of us approaching the Royal Courts of Justice, which is just opposite this rather noisy church. And I say this because a lot of the time when we think about abuses of power or we think about miscarriages of justice, we sometimes think about it in the context of some despotic dictator from the developing world who's undermining his people for his own personal gain. And that's the image that we have, especially in the West, of...
It's always a he, isn't it?
It's always a he as well.
It's such a problem.
But like the archetypal abuse of power is this. Well, actually, we find that this happens all over the world, even in the most developed of countries. And so we've taken you to the Royal Courts of Justice because this is the heart, or this used to be the heart of the UK's legal system. And London itself has not been immune to civil unrest because institutions were deemed to not be upholding the rule of law, not treating their citizens fairly in the eyes of the law, and that in a certain part is what contributed to the riots that swept through this town 5 years ago. I'd like to think 5 years ago. So you can even see that even in the heart of democracy, London itself is not immune to... Wow, that is one bright light.
I'm carrying a torch.
This is like a ghost tour of London. But London is not immune itself to the civil unrest that can follow on from institutions not doing what they're meant to be doing.
Shall we show them the RCJ?
Yeah, we are here now, actually. We are at the Royal Courts of Justice. If we just flip the camera, that's an arch which is lit. You can't really see the insignia, but you're just going to have to take our word for it. It is right in front of us.
Yeah, it's dark and the lights aren't lit, unfortunately.
But if we do it that way, then you can probably see in the background the sign which says Royal Courts of Justice. Yeah. So here we are. And so the point I'd like to leave you guys with is that institutions like this, our MPs, our legal institutions, they're taxpayer funded in many cases, and they're there to represent and serve us. We just walked past a university, one of the leading universities in the world, up the road, and it all starts with education. We need to know our rights to be able to enforce them. We need to know what these institutions are meant to do and how they operate in order for us to hold them to account. And as citizens, we need to be able to use a Lion King analogy, to let out our inner roar when we see he's growing a mane as well, by the way.
Yeah, it's true.
This is his lion, his Mufasa mane. But when we see these institutions acting out of line and not serving us, the citizen, if we see them abusing their power, then we need to be able to take our voice, our knowledge of what they're meant to be, and take that to these institutions in a peaceful protest to be able to ensure future peace. Because we've seen, from example, all across the world, time and time again, that where these institutions fail to represent the people fairly, peace can never follow. So sometimes it's the irony of this situation where we need to create a little bit of noise in order to ensure long-term peace. That is the point that I'd like to make. And Nizam is gonna... Which way shall we go? Which way should we take them?
Oh, let's go down towards this way. Diversity is the spirit of London. How do we transform this diversity into people's power? Very, very good question. And I think David touched upon it in point number 2 when he talked about the importance of us breaking out of our echo chambers. Here's an interesting fact. It's a really sad fact, actually. One of the most segregated places in the UK is London. And that's partly because it's so big and it's so diverse. It's so easy to stick to your own grouping of people. And so one of the easiest things we can do is just look around us and make sure we can essentially talk to people who don't look like us, who don't sound like us, and to try and really fight that echo chamber and take from the beauty of diversity. Partnerships absolutely help. I think one of the things that often happen much too easily is replicating of a mission. You know, some well-intentioned person usually is like, I want to do this, how do I go and fix it? Quite often somebody else has had that same thought and gone and designed or created a program or founded an initiative which is doing exactly that same issue. So the first and best thing we can do is simply to just research, do some desk research and find out what else is out there. So the fifth point that I would like to make, and I might need my battery because I feel like my phone might die, which would be terrible because we've already had one technical issue with this Facebook Live. The fifth point is, it's going to sound a little bit hard, forgive me whilst I quickly fix this phone issue. Sorry guys, making it work.
Can I chime in
we're
just
good to
before
go.
we're doing that? On the issue of diversity, is to not see other people's issue as solely their issue. If you see something happening to someone else and you are not a woman, if you're not an ethnic minority, you're not gay, you're not disabled, you still have a role and a responsibility to step up for justice and for what's right. So the strength of diversity is in everyone being able to appreciate and understand and respect other people's diversity, whether it directly relates to you or not. But Nizam,
It's such a nice segue, David. It's almost like we planned it. So my final point is actually really simple, which is youth is the future, which I know is such a overused adage, but actually there's two things I want to say. One, which is unleash your inner child. You personally, at home, watching right now or later on, the best thing we can do, how do you embrace diversity? It's actually super simple. What we can do is just, when we were born, each and every one of us was not conditioned to think in terms of otherness. We were all one and the same. The beauty and naivety of children, the purity of children, in terms of the way they see the world, is fantastic. And I think one of the things that we can do is almost check our own privileges. And by privilege, you know, I come from a humble background, but I've attained and acquired privileges over the course of my life, being a man, living in London, you know, having a job. There are certain things that we just take for granted, and I think one of the things we can do is just take a step back, reflect and understand our own privileges, and not just that, but then take a step forward, you know, take a step forward to truly try and do something with that. And what can we do having taken a step back? We can help the youth, we can do mentoring, we can go and try and invest in, you know, if you have a job, reach out to someone in your network and try and create an opportunity for somebody to speak to you. It's so simple. I work with young people from deprived communities across the UK, and quite often what you just take for granted is the social and cultural capital that we have growing up, that just because you know about how the jobs market works, somebody else might. That's not often the case. So one of the ways in which we can create a, you know, a peaceful, just society where, there we go, where we have strong institutions, is to really think at a basic level, is every single person in our society contributing? Can they truly contribute? I mean, one of the biggest litmus tests I have always check my own privileges. What if the answer to cancer, to AIDS, to any other, you know, disease that we have or ailment that we have is in the brains of somebody who doesn't have access to education? So in a London context, they might be living in a council estate. In another context, they might be living in a slum. What are we doing as the privileged to ensure that they have the ability and the opportunity to fulfill at least the opportunity to test that and to try and see whether we can make that happen? That is what will create a peaceful and just society, in my opinion. I think every single one of us has a responsibility to really just take a step back, reflect, review, and think about what we are doing to invest in the future. Because frankly, you know, by the time a lot of these issues are peaking, at this rate, I don't know of any biogenics, you know, freezing system that is remotely accessible. So we'll all be gone, and we really need to think about what we're doing to make sure we are thinking about the sustainability of everybody. So that was number 5. We'll quickly reflect. I don't think we need the light.
Okay.
I think we're good now. So look how busy London is. Everyone's jumping on board. They're going home. They're going to the Old Kent Road. So 5 things that me and David would like to leave with you that every country should know or think about on a very personal level to try and make SDG 16 accessible. Mm-hmm. So number 1 is, how do you create societal peace without achieving personal, inner peace on a regular basis, where we are really thinking about consciousness. How does that work? How do we make sure we put mental health and well-being of individuals at the forefront of our society? By doing that and thinking about others, we are well on the way of creating societal peace and global peace. Number 2.
How do you learn to step outside of your box? How do you learn to learn what you don't know? And I would challenge everyone this week that's watching just simply to do one thing. Talk to someone you wouldn't normally talk to and see what they have to say. Share your views, listen to theirs. You may not agree, but you may have a better sense of understanding what someone else who's not you, who doesn't think like you, thinks. And I think that is the basis for peace. I think everyone has a role to play in this, and sometimes it could be simply just being prepared to step outside of your comfort zone and to talk to someone different. Outside of Facebook, if needs be.
Woo! Outside of Facebook.
If needs be.
Number 3, how do you build strong institutions? You build them by being representative. You build them through strength of diversity. It's almost like we planned it, through strength of truly, it's really simple, truly making sure that you have diversity of thinking, you have diversity of everything that others might perceive to be difference. We have all of that, and we're going to try and cross the road right now. So that's number 3. You make sure you take active steps to make the society or the environment that you are in. So if you are working, do me a favor, just go online, go to your organizational website, go online, go to your senior management team. How reflective of that group of people do you see yourself in there? Because if you can't see yourself in there, the chances are loads of other people won't see themselves in there. And that's what we need to do, especially with institutions that essentially reflect us, represent us, who make policies about us, whether that's government or a think tank or a higher education institution. These are places where they cultivate the very environment and fabric of society that we have to live in, that we have to raise our children in, that we have our siblings in, our parents in. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure those places, especially again going back to our own privileges, if we're in a position to help, ask the question. We have social media, we have Facebook Live these days. Oh, we're doing a full circle. And so let's do that. Let's make sure we are really doing our best to make sure the organizations that we every single day step foot in, work in, buy from, are reflective of the values that we want everybody else to have. Number 4.
Number 4 was educating yourself as to what institutions are, what their role is in society, how they're meant to reflect and represent you, and then being able to be brave, to find your inner roar, I think is what we said, to be able to take a stand and challenge them if they're not fulfilling their purpose, if they are not upholding the rule of law, if they're not operating fairly and justly, to being able to call those institutions out in order to achieve those results. And remember, sometimes it's not just about you, because these things play out across nations. It could be just one institution, but you could see instances of this type of abuse or misuse of power being perpetuated across entire nations. We're in London, and yesterday there was an NFL match, and at that match certain players decided that they were not going to stand for the national anthem of the country from which they came from, because they perceived that the institutions there were not treating them in a way that the lyrics of the national anthem suggested that they should be treated, and they, in their own way, decided to make a stand for peace. And I believe that it's incumbent on all of us to be able to hold institutions to account through whatever mechanisms we have available. We all have voices and we all have consciences, and we should use them. Number 4.
Oh, and that building over there that you see, that is Somerset House, beautiful stately home from way back when, which is a technical term for in the past, way back when. In the winter, there's a great ice skating. They have a fine arts museum in there, worth a go when you're here, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
So number 5, a quick summary and recap of our reflections on a personal level of SDG 16, which is about building peaceful societies, a just society with rule of law working, and strong institutions. And we're talking about the basic level of what we can do at a personal level. So number 5 is unleash your inner child. And why is that? Because children, when you see them and you hear them and you see the amazing things that they do, they don't see black and white. They really don't. We are trained and conditioned to have these schisms, conditioned within us, and we need to just stop. We need to somehow not allow that to happen or undo that. And the way we do that is then making sure we give back to the youth around us, to the young people around us, through access to education, jobs, opportunity, so that every single person has the chance to maximize their life, to fulfill their potential, which ultimately is beneficial to every single one of us. So that's the challenge we leave you on. We are on Waterloo Bridge, which interestingly, and this is did I share this fact on this one or the last one? Because we did this for about half an hour and realized we weren't actually live. So this bridge was built as an homage to women in the, hold on a second. Oh no, that's terrible. Let's do it this way. There we go. So this bridge was built as an homage to women in the Second World War, for everything they did and for all the services and all the activity they picked up during that period. You have the most beautiful building in London, St Paul's Cathedral. You have the Oxo Tower, the City of London, David, the beautiful David, the National Theatre, the South Bank, the heart of culture and arts in London. It's a very special place, and despite all of that, we still struggle with SDG 16. And so there's a long way to go. There's things to learn from every single person, every single country, and our challenge to you is really simple. It's not inaccessible. Just because it's a macro level activity at the United Nations doesn't mean you can't get involved. Every single thing we've talked about today, we each can think about and do at home, today, tonight. We can share with our friends, we can get them to do it, and then the hope is if enough of us do it, then we can truly start impacting peace, justice, a fair judicial system and strong and representative institutions everywhere around us, both in our own countries and across the world. So on that note, we love you, and
we're gonna have to say goodbye from London, right?
Yeah, that's it. Take care, and happy second birthday to the SDGs. Bye bye now.